What is on my face? Why am I giving you Colin Bridgerton sideburns right now? What is that? Hello you guys, what's up? It's Belle. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, and if you've come back, thank you so much. Today, you guys, it is finally time to do our June reading wrap up. I am so excited to talk about the books that I read this month. You guys will have to bear with me today. I am sporting a massive migraine. It is just absolutely killing me. Whoever told me to put like my feet in boiling hot water, I hope that your pillow is always cold. Anyways, you guys, I am very excited. This month was probably the most bizarre month for me in terms of variety, I'd like to say. I think you guys, you know, if you've been around for a while, you know that my primary genre is romance. But in the last, 6 or so months, that has come to include a lot more romantasy. And in the last 3 months, it's come to include a lot of thrillers. So I guess like the ratio of genres has been kind of interesting in the last couple of months. So I'm gonna grab my vitamin C and my iron. So let's get comfy, let's get cozy, and let's get right on into the wrap up. Okay, where's my iPad? Where is my iPad? Guys, I dropped my iPad on my toe today, and is it broken? I mean, it could be. So we're gonna start with statistics. If you guys are new and you haven't been on my channel before, I do like to do a few cheeky little statistics before we talk about all of the books. So let me get it up on my iPad. This month I read a total of 9 books, which I'm happy with. It's just the quality, I will say. I read a total of 3,635 pages. My average star rating was 3.25, which as I said is on the lower side. And for the first time ever, my preferred format was audiobook. I can't believe how many audiobooks I listened to this month, but also like even if I had the paperback, I was going to listen to an audio rather than grabbing my Kindle. I just feel like I read so much more every month when I do listen, because if I go on a walk or if I'm cleaning or literally just like putting my washing away, like I will be listening to audiobooks whilst I'm doing so, and you can just get through a book so much quicker. Now, in terms of genres, as I said, this is where we're going to change it up a little bit. In terms of the genre breakdowns, I read 4 thriller books, I read 3 romance books, and I read 2 romantasies. This is the first time ever where I've had like more thriller books than romance, or any genre really than romance. Normally romance is like my top every single month, so it's kind of interesting that that ended up happening. And in terms of my ratings, again, we have a variety. We had 1 5-star, which success. We had 2 4.75 stars, 2 4 stars, 1 3.5 star, 1 2 star, 1 1 star, and 1 DNF. I still had like 5 books above that 4 star, so that is great, but I still did have 4 books under that 3.5 star mark. Those are my statistics. I think it's about time that we talk about the first book that I read. So the first book that I read this month was Face Off. This is by Chelsea Curto. I have never read anything by this author before. I've never read anything in this series before, but this is an ice hockey romance, and the concept is definitely intriguing. It does follow this young girl who is a very famous ice hockey player who gets traded to be the very first female player on the NHL. It's very cool. She then becomes, I guess, acquainted with Maverick, who is the captain of the NHL. He is a, playboy ladies man, is never seen with the same girl twice, has a new girl in his bed all the time. And it sort of, becomes that sort of like playful, flirting, forced proximity romance between the two of them. I will say that I actually was really enjoying this book for the first, I'd like to say 30%, because it was refreshing, and actually one of my favorite things about this book was the humor and the authenticity, I guess, of like the group chat messages and the way that the comedic characters were bouncing off of each other. And I think I really admired, funnily enough, the side characters, if that makes sense. I was enjoying whenever we got time with them rather than who the main, story was following, which is Emmy and Maverick, I believe are their names. The one thing I don't really enjoy in books is the friends with benefits trope. It really just like doesn't do it for me. No matter how many times I read it, it just is not for me. There is a difference for me between like friends with benefits and like dating, or like dating coach, dating lessons. That's different to me, like between fake dating, but I guess the like sleeping together, friends with benefit things, it just doesn't do it for me. I then spiraled so hard with this book because I just realized that I'm sick to death of ice hockey romance. romance. And if you guys have seen my last couple of videos, you will see that I have mentioned that quite a few times. I just feel like all these books are becoming so repetitive, and I know where they're going and I know how it's going to end. And look, that may just be a thing for me in terms of I am just reading so much of the same thing. We were just going in circles with this book and I got to the 70% mark and I said I can't do it anymore, which does kind of suck because I actually do have an interest in the other characters. So that being said, I DNF this book at 70%. However, I do have the desire to read the next ones because, as I said, I really connected with the side characters. Unfortunately, my very first read of the month was a DNF. Anyway, so because I finished Face Off, or like DNF Face Off, at 70%, I was like, I need a change of pace. I want something different. I thought maybe I could go for an audiobook, and I decided to reach for this book that I'd seen floating around on TikTok last year. I'd like to say in like September, October time, and it's called We Used to Live Here. This is by Marcus Clyware. This book is so insane. I'm just gonna preface this before I even get into it. So this is a thriller. The concept of this one here is that we are following a couple. Their names are Eve and Charlie, and they have recently just purchased this old house to renovate and flip. That is what the two of them do together. They buy old houses, they do them up, and they sell them. So they have recently purchased this house at 3709 Heritage Lane, I think it is. So one day, Eve is actually home alone. Charlie's gone to work, and she gets a knock at her front door, and there is a family standing on the front porch. There is a man, a wife, two sons, and a little girl. The man says, I'm so sorry to bother you. I know this is so random and out of the blue, but I actually used to live here when I was younger. We were just passing through the neighborhood, and you absolutely do not have to say yes, but I would love to show my kids and my wife where I grew up. So no pressure at all, but is there any chance I could show them around the house? He's like so cool about it. He's like, totally understand that this is so random and weird. And Eve obviously is like very hesitant. She's like, you know, I should never let strangers into my house. She tries to call Charlie, her partner, and ask her if, you know, they can come inside, and she doesn't answer. So she tries to go the whole, oh, I'm so sorry, like my partner's like is not really comfortable with it, like blames it on her sort of thing. But Eve then sees the little girl's face and she feels really bad, and because Eve is such a people pleaser, she decides that she's going to give them 15 minutes to look around the house. That is literally all I'm going to tell you guys about this book in terms of setting it up, because there is no other way to describe this book other than incredibly insane. So when I read this book, as I said, I listened to it on audio, and I highly recommend the audio. However, if you are a little bit of a brainiac, you should buy the physical, and that's why I bought the physical. And the reason you should buy the physical is there is Morse code in this book. When I was listening to it, okay, when I was listening to this book, I was like, oh, what's this cool like radio static? This is so cool. How embarrassing, I didn't know that it was Morse code. But if you actually read the book, there are these documents like littered throughout the book, and at the end of each document chapter, there is Morse code, which I have indeed written what the words are. But this book is so intricate in a way I've never, ever read a book as detailed as this in my life. Now, after reading this book, I can't explain to you. Okay, I finished this book. The audiobook ended in such a space that I was like, no way. I was gagged. I was happy with like a 4.5 star. I was like, this is great. I then cannot explain to you guys the way I went on a full manic deep dive into this book after I finished it. I watched this video here. If you've read this book and you want even more and like want to just really get into the nitty gritty of it, please watch this girl's video. It's like an hour and 40 minutes long explaining this book, because as I said to you guys, I don't think I was smart enough to understand this book as I was reading it, because it is so clever and so much more intricate than even I could comprehend. This book is genius. This author must have spent years and years and years crafting this, because it's so clever. As I was saying, there are documents in here. There is Morse code littered through here. There are things in here that I can't tell you because they are massive spoilers. Like, it goes without saying, I'm giving it 5 stars because I have not been able to stop thinking about this book since I finished it. It's mind trippy. You'll be questioning if the people in your life are actually the people in your life. It's incredible. So I highly recommend if you would like a thriller that is going to make your mind work on overtime. Next up, because coming off the high of that, I was just like, yep, give me the next one. I decided to read Home Before Dark. This is by Riley Sager. Now, this one also had a really cool concept. So this book sort of has like a dual timeline, okay? The premise of this book here is essentially essentially we are following a family. 25 years ago, this family moved into this old house. It was just basically a husband and wife and their small 5-year-old daughter. They moved into this house, and 20 days after they moved into this house, they fled in the middle of the night, claiming there was paranormal activity happening in the house that was a threat to their lives. Okay, once this sort of happened, the father in this family actually wrote a whole novel explaining and detailing what they sort of experienced in the house within the 20 days from when they purchased it to when they fled in the middle of the night. And it has become a huge global phenomenon, and he became very, very, very rich and famous because of this. Now we are currently in the present day, 25 years after this, and we are following the daughter. Her name is Maggie, who does not believe a single word that her father had written because she doesn't remember any of it. She thinks that he is making it up so that he could, have a successful book and story, because she just doesn't remember anything from that time when she lived in the house. Now, we open with her at a will reading because her father has passed away, and in this will, he has actually left the house to Maggie, so they never sold the house. So essentially in this book, you are getting a past present timeline. You are actually getting to read the father's book and his account of what happened in the house, and then you have Maggie in present day who has moved back into the house and try to do it up to sell it, and you are getting what she is experiencing in the house in present time. This book was super clever because it really does have unreliable narrators, and you are trying to figure out who is telling the truth. Is her dad telling the truth? Is Maggie's story the truth? It's so clever. I really had a good time listening to this. The audiobook was incredible as well. I really enjoyed it. I believe I ended up giving this book 4-star. The plot twist was really great. It made my skin itch. When you're reading, if you guys are thriller readers or horror readers, when you read a book that really does creep you out, that's what this book did. It was very clever. I haven't read anything by Riley Sager before, and if you haven't either, I highly suggest you pick it up because it was just easy breezy, beautiful cover girl from the beginning. So after Home Before Dark, I actually did a 24-hour reading challenge. So if you guys saw that, you will have seen the books that I'm about to talk about, but I thought I'd talk about them in a tiny little bit more depth now that we're at the wrap-up stage. So the first book that I read in that little 24-hour challenge was a photo finish by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. I have been putting off continuing this series for a really long time because the first book just wasn't of the quality, I guess, of Elsie's other series, so the Chestnut Springs and the Rose Hill series, because obviously this is her debut series and the first book was her debut novel. So I think I gave that book a 4 or a 3.5, and then I just put the series down because it wasn't a priority for me. A lot of you guys really liked a photo finish, which does follow Violet Eaton, who is the sister of Cade, Rhett, and Beau from the Chestnut Springs series, if you are familiar. What is on my face? Why am I giving you Colin Bridgerton's sideburns right now? What is that? Be so for real. Sorry, that just made my Friday. Anyway, so I thought it was finally time to pick this one up. This also had such an interesting concept, and it's nothing that I've read in a small town before. So as I said, this follows Violet Eaton, who has moved away from another small town to join a different small town because she sort of just feels, I guess, smothered by the love of her brothers and her dad. They are very protective because her mother did pass away during childbirth, so they've just always been very protective of her, and she just really wants to step out on her own and do her own thing, be her own person. And in order to take that part of herself back, she decides one day that she is going to, I guess, post some very cheeky photos on a forum just to feel, a little bit of empowerment. And she ends up chatting with this man, and they form a really beautiful friendship over a year or so, and then it gets to a point where it becomes really heated between the two of them, and then they do, after this encounter, stop speaking. So when Violet turns up in this new town, she runs into Cole, and Cole is the man that she was speaking to online for the last year or so. So it's this forced proximity, and can I just tell you guys, Cole is an ex-military soldier, and there is something about the story stories, guys. Every time I like hear that a book features like a wounded man, like mentally wounded, I'm like, yes, I eat it up, I lick the bowl, give it to me in spades. And when I heard that he was ex-military, I was like, I know it's gonna give me my Reese Larson crumbs. Guys, this book was so good. Why does nobody praise this book? This is on par with Chestnut Springs, okay? This was beautiful. I was crying. There was moments, he kept calling her the sun catcher, guys. Like she was his son. Like, you know what I mean? Like his light. And I was like, oh my God, it was so beautiful. I just had such a great time reading this. Obviously I read it very fast because it was in a 24-hour challenge, but I would have read it fast anyways. Regardless, this is up here, guys. This is better than some of those Rose Hill books, which you know I'm not a massive fan of all of the Rose Hill books. This was great. I gave it 4.75 stars. I think I gave it like a 2 chili spice. Elsie always hits with the spice. You guys know that. I'm just very, very, very happy that I read this, and it makes me excited to continue and finish this series, hopefully in the next few months. Okay, next up, during that challenge, I obviously wanted to have like an audiobook going because, you know, for the times that I'm driving or I'm lying in bed or I'm working or doing something, I wanted something that I could be listening to. So I decided to read this book. It's called Keep It in the Family by John Mars, I don't know how you say his name, but essentially, God, I forgot that I read this book. I'm gonna be so for real with you guys, I forgot that I read this book. So this book follows a young couple who have been looking to buy a house for the last couple of years, but they have always had pretty bad luck because every time they put a deposit down, the owner might pull out or renege and say, no, we don't want to sell the house anymore. Like they just keep ending up in these scenarios where they're not having much luck on this market. This is also adding to the fact that these, you know, this poor couple have been trying to conceive for a while now, and you know the wife just feels like it's really not going to happen for them, and then you know they've been through all these rounds of IVF and they just haven't been able to have a baby, which is really unfortunate. However, one day they find this house online. It's going for a really great price and they decide to just put an offer down without even looking at the house. That's how desperate they are to just have a place. They say, you know what, we can fix it up if we need to and just make it our own. So they literally end up buying this house without going to see it in person, and they move in, and miraculously a couple of weeks after they move in, the wife ends up becoming pregnant with a little boy. After a couple of weeks of being in this house, they find something in the attic, and it's highly disturbing, and it just like flips all their world on their heads, right? So here's my thing with this book. I was actually really enjoying this for maybe the first 20%. I was having a good time. I was intrigued. What I really enjoyed about the audio narration is that it had 4 different narrators because we had 4 different point of views, which I loved. I loved that we, you know, got that audio listening experience. But for a book that was only like 380 pages, we got to a point when I was listening to it, and if you guys saw my vlog, you saw how like frustrated I got. I was like, this book needs to be finished, like it's done. We had like a massive reveal, a massive plot twist, and I was like, yep, cool, this is great, the book's finished. And I still had 2 hours of listening left, and I was like, what? It just dragged out and it was silly, and it got to the point where I was like, why am I still listening to this book? It was incredibly frustrating to listen to. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. When it was finished, I like breathed the biggest sigh of relief. And rounding out that little 24-hour reading challenge, I read this book, guys. I read this book and it was so good, okay? It was called A Deal with the Elf King. This is by Elsie Cover. I have read nothing by this author before. I literally picked this up when I was book shopping a couple of weeks ago in like a only buying books I think that I'd never seen or heard of before. And this is a romantasy, and it is a Beauty and the Beast inspired retelling, which I actually didn't realize when I purchased the book that that's what it was going to be. And this book is so cool, you guys. So essentially we have these 2 realms. We have a fae realm and we have a human world. There's sort of this decree that every like 100 years, I want to say maybe, the fae will come and take a human queen from the human world and bring her back to the fae realm to keep the peace and to keep the magic alive in the fae realm, if that makes sense. So when our story opens, apparently the fae have not come and taken a fae queen for a couple of centuries now because they haven't been able to find her. But on the day that the book opens, the fae king has come, and he realizes that Luella, our female main character, is actually the human queen that they have been looking for. So he marries her on the spot and he takes her back to the fae realm. That's literally all I'm gonna say, because this book, you guys, has one of my favorite little ingredients in it, and it is, I mean, it may just be the Beauty and the Beast of it all, but it is a male main character who is morally grey on the outside, but he's not angry, right? He's just like a gentle giant type of character where he does have this like brave front, closed off, but inside he is an absolute softie. I see it in characters like the villain from Assistant to the Villain, and if you've read Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks, he reminds me so much of Callum. Like, that is one of my favorite male main characters, and I feel like it doesn't get written enough. There's a difference between having a morally grey romantasy lead who's a warrior and is like, you know, kind of stoic, like, you know, Xaden and Rhysand and all those people, and then you have a character like the Elf King here who genuinely is just like very internalized, but is low-key like the biggest softie. Does that make sense? Like, he's not mean, he's just quiet. That's what it is. So that is something I really loved about this. I flew through this book, and what I loved about it is I feel like lately romantasy has gotten to this point where it just like can take itself too seriously, and it's been a while, at least for me, that there has been a newer release where it doesn't take itself seriously. It can be funny and goofy and just like easy romance, right? Like slow burn, but it's just effortless romance. The plot is there, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. That is what I really loved about this book. So guys, I ended up giving this a 4.75 stars as well, and I think maybe I gave it like a 1 chili spice because there's somewhat of a spicy scene in this, but I loved it. I can't wait to read the next one because it's a Cinderella retelling, and Eros and Sagi, you know. Up next, I was very kindly sent an early copy of Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry ahead of its Australian traditional release. I know that this book has been available on Kindle and in the US for a while, but in Australia it only recently got released. So this is Devney Perry's romantasy debut, and it is a novel that I was so excited to read because I've read a lot of Devney's romance books. I've seen a lot of my friends now on TikTok read this and absolutely love it and devour it. So I was really excited after finishing A Deal with the Elf King to just keep going on my romantasy kick. Yeah, as soon as I received this, I actually went on a little girls' weekend and I took it with me and I started it immediately. So it's big. It's a big book. How do I explain and describe this world? So this book follows Odessa. She is a princess in Quintus, okay? She is this princess in Quintus, but she's not like the crown princess. Her younger sister has basically been like training up her whole life to be like a trade queen. You know how they used to make like deals and stuff for trade where they like marry off somebody to keep the peace and whatever. So her younger sister has been essentially been training to wed a prince from another realm. However, when this day does come to make the trade and to get married, the prince says, no. I don't want the one you've been trading up. I want Odessa, who is her sister. The prince, I should note, has this man with him and he is called the Guardian. We don't really know his name when you meet him in the book, and the prince is kind of like quiet. He won't speak. Only the Guardian will speak on behalf of the prince. So literally all I can say is that obviously the prince ends up choosing Odessa to be his wife, and this book follows their journey back to his home kingdom. So I'm really scared to talk about this book, and I have not even written a review for this book on Goodreads or Fable or anything yet because I have been trying to figure out where my thoughts sit with this book. So here is what I'm going to tell you. I really loved the setup. The setup was there, the concept was there, the enemies to lovers of it all, the banter was there. I was having a really good time, but this book is so incredibly slow, and as I told you guys, it's huge. And what I really felt was the issue here was pacing. So I really felt like we probably could have shaved 200 pages off of this because it was just filler. It was all filler. We really didn't get too much until towards the last, you know, quarter of the book, the last third of the book, whatever. It just was very slow, very stagnant. I also noticed obviously that, you know, this is not Devney Perry's primary genre. She writes romance, so the romance elements were super strong. I felt like everything else was really clunky. We were reading action scenes and fight scenes, and I didn't really connect certain bits because it felt, again, quite clunky. It's funny, I liked the story, the writing was not engaging. Does that make sense? So I really thought on a while what I wanted to rate this book. I do think that the ending was really cool. Will I read the next one? Maybe. I'll see how I feel when it does come out, but I decided to land on a 3.5 star for this book. I think I rated it 2 chili spice as well. That's how I felt. It's not a bad book, book, but it's not a great book. I would like to see how her narrative style changes in the second book, because the way that it ended, it's definitely open for a book 2. Then, because I guess I was just after the Chunky Monkey books this month, I decided to face my fear, and I finally continued The Boys of Tommen, and I read Taming 7. I need my emotional support bookmark while I talk about this book. Okay, so this is a Claire and Gibbsy bookmark. So if anybody loves them, one of my besties' small businesses, so if you want to go check it out, I'll link it down below. For those who know me, I started my Boys of Tommen journey earlier this year. I read Binding and Keeping 13, Saving and Redeeming 6. I would say in a matter of 2 weeks, I just banged them all out. Binding 13 I read in 1 day, and I was really loving them, but after finishing Redeeming 6, I needed a break. If you guys have read the series, you'll know that those 2 books, especially Redeeming 6, are incredibly difficult to get through and are very heavy. So I just needed a break. That coupled with the fact that I had just heard so much negativity around Taming 7. Now, for those who don't know the lore of this world, the structure of the series so far is that Binding and Keeping 13 follow one couple, Saving and Redeeming 6 follows another couple, and people assumed that Taming 7 was also going to be 2 books as well. Just in my personal opinion, given the first 2 books, it gives the couples enough time to have their story feel really complete and breathe and give it layers and depth. I have said 1,000,001 times that Gerard Gibson is one of my favorite characters literally ever, and he's my favorite character from the series. Okay, Gibbsy just like weaseled his way into my little heart, and I just love him so deeply. Okay, like so deeply. So I was scared to read his book because I didn't want that image sort of tainted, because everyone was saying that his book is their least favorite and it was very weak. Now, I didn't realize this, but I've now known because my bestie Char has informed me. But, you know, during the time that Taming 7 was being, you know, written and published, Chloe Walsh obviously did get signed with a publisher, and she started going down the traditional publishing route. Hence why this book is so short, because apparently, I mean, I don't know how true it is, but I'm assuming that it is, but you know, apparently she was sort of forced to cut this book down in size. So because again, this is the middle of the series, I can't tell you exactly what is going on. However, we are following Claire and Gibbsy. It is a childhood friends to lovers that we have just been seeing for the last 4 books, and it is a story that I was just so excited to read. Gibbsy is the comedic relief side character who is the lovable goof who always puts a smile on everybody's faces, is always there to offer a joke, to lighten the mood, and that is always who we have seen him as. He has such a big heart too. There are so many things that he did for the other characters throughout the other books that just made me love him so deeply, and I loved his relationship with Claire, because even from book 1, so this is not a spoiler, everyone in the group is like, why are these 2 people not together yet? You know those people in high school, or maybe you have them in your group as well, who they just flirt endlessly and act like a married couple, and you're like, why are they not dating yet? That is Clara and Gibbsy. So that is a setup of this story. So I'm gonna tell you my thoughts on this book. First of all, I just don't understand why so many people hated on this book, because I thought, yes, I feel bad. The story didn't feel completely rounded and whole like the first 4 books did, but the story that I got in this, I was not prepared for. I was not prepared for in the slightest. I often say when I talk about Boys of Tommen that when I read Keeping 13 in particular, I felt physically sick reading that book, and this happened again. I am so glad that I took a break between Redeeming 6 and reading this, because this, like I said, there were moments in this that I was just not prepared for, and that I felt physically ill reading it. I was crying so much reading this book. I think like I haven't even been able to like move past this after I finished it, and I finished it over a week ago. I'm still here. Like I can't get over it. I know a lot of you were disappointed with like the size of it, because yes, it's the smallest book in Boys of Tommen so far. It's like maybe 500 pages compared to the 800 to 1,000 that we used to get. Just love these people in this story, in this world so much. So I gave this book 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it. Yes, it was not up to the par of, you know, Binding and Keeping 13, because those are my favorites so far. Given that she was sort of forced to cut so much out, I still was very happy with what I read. When I got this bookmark in the mail, I just cried, because look at all the Claire and Gibbsy lore. And last, and definitely least, I was gonna say last but certainly not least. No, but it's definitely least. We're going to talk about a book that I finished this morning. And this is kind of hilarious, you guys, because if you guys have seen my July TBR video where I essentially wrapped up some books that I was keen on reading in July, you will have seen this book I'm about to hold up, because obviously I am filming this before the end of the month. It's the 27th of June right now, and you guys are probably going to see this on the 31st. So I don't even know if I graduated preschool because there's 30 days in June, Belle. Anyways, you guys are gonna see this on the 30th of June. The last book that I read this month is a thriller because I guess, yep. I read When She Returned. This is by Lucinda Berry, and as you guys saw, it was on my my July TBR. And because it is obviously quite short, I started this yesterday and finished it this morning. This book is about this lady, this mother. Her name's Kate. One day she was basically abducted from a Target parking lot and she hasn't been seen for 11 years until one day she comes running out of the woods with a baby in her arms and she makes it to a gas station. She is crying and screaming for help, and she tells this gas station attendant that her name is Kate Bennett, who, as I said, has been missing for 11 years. And this is a story of, I guess, like what is going to be happening now, trying to integrate her back into her old life. She has a husband and daughter that she left behind. The husband is now remarried. The daughter is now 16 years old. She doesn't know her mother. And I guess like we are throughout this book trying to figure out where Kate has been all these years. So I hated this book. I'm so sorry, you guys. This book was really bad. Like, it was so bad. Okay, so like, here's my problem. I knew going into this that this was about a cult, okay? And I've never read a book about a cult before, but I think like in my head, I was like, oh, maybe it's gonna be about like, you know, spooky things, like spooky cult. No. I'm not going to offend anybody here when I say this. I'm not particularly religious. It doesn't bother me when it's mentioned in books. It's whatever. I'm pretty neutral about it. However, I don't like when it's like a cult that is like brainwashing people into intense devotion. It's too much for me. I don't like reading it. Some of the things I was reading in here was super confronting and disturbing and just like made me feel gross and icky, and I did not like it. For some reason was like, I'm just gonna finish it. I'm gonna finish it even though it was awful. But you know, I thought it's so small, like I can just do it. I can do it. I finished it and the ending wasn't even worth it. The ending was not even worth it. It was so bad. I want to give you a 0, but that's not possible, so I give you a 1. I would not wish this upon my worst enemy. You know, I was talking about Keep It in the Family and I was like, that book was terrible, 2 stars. I didn't think I could read a thriller any worse than that, but I was wrong. I was wrong. This is bin material. Respectfully, I'm so sorry. Alrighty, you guys. Those are all the books that I read this month. Alrighty, you guys, that is all for today's wrap up. Thank you so much for sticking through all the way to the end if you did. I really, really appreciate it. What was your favorite book that you read in June? I would love to know. As always, if you guys aren't already, you're more than welcome to follow me on my socials. I'll leave my handles on the screen and in the description box. And if you'd like to, you can like this video and subscribe to my channel, and make sure you are hitting that notification bell. That way you're notified each time a brand new video goes up. The next video, you guys, is going to be the mid-year reading check-in. I'm so excited. I love watching these videos and I'm excited to film it for you guys because we're basically going to get into the nitty-gritty of all of, I'd like to say, the 55 books that I've read so far this year. So keep an eye out for that one. Thank you guys so much for stopping by again. I really appreciate it. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are having a lovely day or a lovely night, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye!